Let's talk about modular mods. Is it good to make a mod modular, or is it not that good of a concept? If we want to make our mod modular, what are some examples out there? And what is the difference between a core mod, a library mod? How can we utilize the library system these days? Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. Before we dive into the concepts and hows and if it's good or not, let's take a look at a little bit of history. Now, what was the origin of modular mods? Back in old days, we had few technical mods like industrial craft, buildcraft, and then Eloram, who was actively participating in developing the fancy mod loader, published her own mod called Red Power. Now, Red Power was the very first time that we see modular mod concept. In version 1.2.5, she published the Red Power Core as a singular mod first. Red Power Core only was responsible of registering items and blocks. It wouldn't even make ore generation. It was just that. It would register ore and block and items. Then she published Red Power World. Now World was responsible of making those ores generate in the world and also a little bit of a nice thing to have in the world in the name of a volcano that was a mountain with lava coming out from the top and following down. Other than these, Red Power World had no other functionality. Then she published Red Power Wiring. Wiring was all about redstone wires that could go vertically or horizontally without the limitation of 15 block distances, and you could just put these wires infinitely in a horizontal distance and the redstone would transfer. Later down the road, she published Red Power Logic. Logic was all about some block entities. At that time, it was named tile entities that was responsible of handling redstone logic like AND gates, OR gates, RS NOR latch, NOT gate. Unlike repeaters and comparators, you could put them vertically because, well, let's face it, you could put the redstone wires vertically now. She made it so that these logic gates could be put vertically on any block. After that, she developed and published Red Power Lighting. Now, this had nothing to do with the light engine inside the game. It was just some redstone lamps with custom textures and custom colors. After that, Eloram developed and published machines. Machines were block entities that would do different things in the game like any other tech mod. However, there was no functionality like what industrial craft would do or build craft would do. Eloram had his own machines, and honestly, referring to her blog, when she started developing Red Power, there was a gap. People would like to have build craft and would like to have industrial craft at the same time in a mod pack. But these two mods were not able to communicate with each other. Red Power tried to add some machines that would make these two systems talk to each other as the mediator. Finally, as the last production in the chain, she developed Red Power Control. Now, Red Power Control, if I remember correctly, it was all about tubes that would transfer items from one inventory to another inventory. Now, take note, the next version of Red Power came out at 1.4.6. There was this huge gap in the versioning and time. At that time, Eloram tried to reduce the number of modules, so she published Red Power Core. Now, Red Power Core had the word and wiring inside of it. Next, it was Red Power Digital. Digital was the combination of logic and lighting. Then she added Red Power Machines and Red Power Compat. At this time, Eloram left the community. Now, before I move forward, we need to take a look at this global picture, and referring to one of her last blog posts, we will understand something that we'll use in future minutes in our talk. She says that it's really hard to maintain my mod because Minecraft is changing so fast, MCP is changing so fast, and because of these two, Forge is changing so fast. It makes parts of my mod code obsolete every time I want to update. And because of that, she left the modding community. And her last post was all about she is trying to develop her own game on her own custom game engine. And I'm not sure if it ever came out or not. Now, before we move forward, we need to make something clear. Red Power Core, this core in the name of Red Power caused a big misunderstanding between those mod developers who were new to the whole modding process, even years after that. Now, in theory, a core mod is a very special mod. It tweaks the core mechanics of Minecraft. In most cases, they are using ASM programming, and there are few examples that may help you understand the concept, like changing the light engine inside Minecraft. Sodium mod is an example. It is changing some core functionalities inside the engine to optimize the engine itself. Now, in contrast, later down the road, many people misunderstood the core name. They thought that if we separate section of our code, we can develop and publish a mod with the name core. However, these are library mods. They add functionality, or they are some utility classes, or some helper classes, or some abstract classes being collected inside a build project and published separately. I don't mean that you should do it. Be careful about this. I'm talking about history now. People had done it. Many people had separated sections of their code and called it core mod. When the community went against them, they called it library mod. These library mods were all about some functionality helpers or utilities or abstract classes being dissected from their main mod, published as a mod dependency. So if you would want to play some mod, you had to download and install that or this library or core mod. Here we are using the core in a wrong concept, but it was what it was. People were doing it. People were misnaming their mods and dependencies. In reality, they were naming their library mods as core. Anyways, you had to install this library mod so that the main mod would work. This caused a huge problem. We will talk about why and why not later. Here is a question. Should we make our mods modular? Is it a good approach or not? Well, what I'm gonna say from this moment forward is my personal opinions and some feedback that I saw one or two old developers say. Some people may not agree with this. Some people, especially new developers, say that it's easier for updating our mod. If something is changed, we are limiting the sections of code inside different projects. So for example, if the item registry is changing, now we don't need to make the whole project loaded. We just work with a smaller project with smaller folder structure, and it's easier for us to find our classes, finding the place that needs to change, and things like that. Others say that it's easier for maintenance, not for updating. But if we want to add some functionality or feature, we can limit our working area on some section of code, and we don't care about other sections. We may get in some error cases because of these conflicts. We will talk about these in few minutes, so just listen. Others say that it's easier to understand the project structure and it's easier for development. Now, here's the big question. Is it really easier? To answer each one of these, those who say that it's easier for updating, let's face it, when something is changing in Minecraft, it has two different sides to it. Either it's not touching your code or it's touching your code. If it's not touching your code, so be it. You build your mod. Anyway, if it's touching your code, it can be a small tweak or it can be a huge, massive rewriting sections of your code. For example, 1.21 changed the whole concept behind the enchantments and how you should develop your enchantment. Before that, you had to write code. Now it is data driven using JSONs. So no matter what you did inside your modular mod, you have to go back into that enchanting, for example, section. You have to do the whole process. So it doesn't change anything. You have to fix errors regardless of the structure of your project or projects. However, when it comes to those people who say it's easier for maintaining, we will talk about a smart way of handling a very complex mod for big team development teams out there. But for smaller mods, that doesn't make sense because you need to publish and handle more than one project. And if you go back and watch the clarification video, when I'm talking about multi-mod loader, I'm talking about code sync. Now, here is one of those cases that we come face to face with code syncing. If you are dissecting your mod into many multiple submodules, publishing and maintaining your mod becomes much more complex. First of all, because of keeping the code synced, especially on backward compatibility. And second of all, because if you want to develop something new, it makes the whole project much more complex, especially if these submodules have to talk to each other. And that causes a confusion when you want to follow the logic of someone else's mod, or even if you come back to your mod, for example, 3 months later, you may forgot that a very special case is talking to another submodule. So when you want to follow the logic in that submodule, either you have to look at the external libraries for another project, or you have to open that project and follow the logic there. So it makes following the logic much more confusing, time consuming, and exhausting. So is it easier for development? Well, if you are a lazy developer, you may say, yes, it makes things easier. I can make a mod that will just register some items and ores and make the ore generation with few recipes for basic item tools, and I will publish it so that people can have them. And then I can sit back and put time and develop, for example, my block entities and machines with functionalities, and I have all the time in the world now because people have the armor, have the tools, and they are having fun with them. Well, guess what? It's not. On the other side, some people say that, hey, my mod is a very complex mod and it's time consuming to develop this mod. I want people to start using my mod faster while I'm developing some sections. Well, guess what? It's again not a good practice, at least in my opinion, because if I want some shovels or pickaxes that are godly, well, guess what? We have enchantments. Making a mod modular, it's not making things easier at all. So if you want to be a lazy developer, so be it. No one has the right to push you forward beyond your comfort zone. If you want to take your time, or you don't have lots of time to put inside modding, so be it. Let the process go as fast as you are comfortable with, no matter who is saying and no matter what he is or she is saying. On the other hand, if your mod is a complex mod and needs time to develop, again, so be it. Don't rush things. There is no reason for practicing this approach for these reasons. Now, there are some exceptions here and there. at least in my opinion. For example, if you have one of those mods that make configurations possible, like cloud config or YACL, yet another config loader, then yes, you need to make a modular mod for config definitions and developing configs, because not only you yourself are a user of the system, many other people may use the system. Again, you can't make a configuration system a library. Why? Because that configuration mod itself has to tweak some functionalities until other dependencies can depend and things happen. It's not a core mod, in my opinion, but it needs to be a modular mod. Mods like architecture, these mods add tons of mixins, have their own hooks all over the place so that other developers can use them. They may be core mods or maybe not be a core mod. That doesn't change. They need to be a mod by themselves so that others can use it. Now, Sodium, I would put it under core mod category. I'm not sure about the code. I didn't take a look at the code. I'm not sure if it's tweaking the core with ASM or not. But the concept here is that Sodium is changing the mechanics and how Minecraft is functioning internally to make things more optimized. So yes, it needs to be a mod by itself. Although, let's face it, no mod is depending on Sodium other than Sodium extra mods that add extra functionality to Sodium. However, I'm just trying to make the concept more clear here. And of course, any other mod that is a core mod should be a separate module all by itself. Now, here is a very special mod that is practicing modular development in a smart way. Smart approach of Ender.io has sub-projects. Now, here's the thing. Each project can be built separately. On the other hand, the developers can build the whole thing as a single mod. Why did they do this? They didn't do it to have easier time on maintenance or development or publishing. No. First of all, Ender.io has somewhat a medium-sized team behind it. There are multiple developers working on Ender.io at the same time. Breaking these projects into sub-projects make things easier for communicating between team members internally. Also, they publish both versions. They publish Ender.io as a whole mod and these modular sections as another publication. Why do they publish these submodules? Because some people, some players, want to use some sections of this mod. For example, many people like conduits that Ender.io produce. However, personally, myself think that, for example, as a player, the Ender.io's spawners are a little bit overpowered. And some machines, I don't like machines and industrial gameplay anymore. So I would like to utilize those conduits without use case of many of those machines. And that is where this modular approach comes out. Now I can install sections of this mod to have the bare minimum needed for conduits, and that's it. So here's the question. Is it easier to have this approach? Hell no. It's still hard. The previous talk about the whole process is still valid. It's not easy for them. It's a personal preference of the developer team for maintaining their mod internally. However, take note, they build Ender.io as a single mod out there as the main product. So if you have a single mod and you want to have an extra module that is separating parts of the abstract functionality outside of your main mod, and you are sure that you may have one or two or three mods that utilize this dissected section and no other person may need it, or even if other people may need it, but it is not a core mod and it is possible to utilize library system, then do it. If you don't understand the difference between libraries and published mods, take a look at the Energy API, or I don't know, any other library mods out there. If you take note, none of the players install Energy API as a separate mod in their list. Each mod developer is depending on Energy API in such a way that when they build their mod, the final product is injecting the code of Energy API inside itself. So it's a whole product with the code of Energy API in itself. We will talk about a library mod and we will develop our own library mod later down the road. And we will talk about jar in jar at the time. Just keep this whole concept as a theory concept in mind right now when we are starting our intermediate section of the roadmap. So that's it. If you want to dissect your abstract classes, in my opinion, and I have some feedback in the chat rooms from others, it's a better approach to utilize the library system and develop those dissected sections as a library. Don't make a mod for this because let's face it, as a player myself, I hate it when I see that one single mod is forcing me to install one library mod developed by the same developer. And when I'm looking at the repository or the mod list of that developer, I see that the library mod and the mod that I want to play with is the only production of this developer. What's the point of that? If you are just making a single mod, please keep that dissected section of your code inside the same project. If you want to, yes, you can make a sub package and a subfolder and put the whole thing there so that you can close it and don't look at it later, but keep it in the same project. If you still want to keep that as a separate project, please, please, please learn how to use library systems and jar in jar and inject that library inside your main mod. So as a player, many other players will have the same opinion. We don't like to have two mods for one functioning mod. We like to install a single mod that does the whole thing. You may ask, why did Eloram had dissected her mod as the one of the very few developers who were early in developing community? At the time, it was time consuming to develop their mods. If you take note, took two versions of Minecraft from 1.2 up to 1.4 so that Eloram can update her mod. At the time, it would take even months for Eloram to add some functionality inside Forge so that some ideas could happen and then she would develop her own mod. Now, if you go back to the first slide, you would see that between 1.2 and 1.4, Eloram had combined different sections and she was in the process of combining everything inside the one single product. However, as I said, she got fed up with the amount of changes happening inside Minecraft, inside MCP, and inside Forge, and she left the community before she make the whole thing one singular mod. So don't take her approach and say that, hey, it's a valid use case. Think back, what happened, when did it happen, and what was the situation at the time. I hope this video helped some people out there. I apologize in advance if I talk too much. That's a bad habit of me. I'm working on it. However, it's really hard. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.